So I say let's dive into it. So you're here, you're in the right spot. This is our guide to the 2024 SRP elections. These elections only come around once every 2 years. So I'm really excited that we finally get the opportunity to talk about them and hopefully teach you all a little bit about what you need to know to participate. Couple housekeeping notes before we dive into it. So we are in a webinar mode, so we cannot actively see or hear the participants, but we want to know your questions. So if at any point throughout the presentation you have a question for any of the panelists, feel free to type it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can also use the chat function, but just be aware everybody can see what you type in the chat. So we kind of try to use that for simple comments or discussions with other attendees. If you have something you really want us to answer, go ahead and use that Q&A button. This webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to share a recording afterwards if you want to come back to this and share it with your friends or neighbors or anybody else who wasn't able to make it tonight. If we haven't met yet, my name is Adrian Keller. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Arizona Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. I've been with the organization for about 2 years now, and I live in Phoenix. Solar United Neighbors is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a solar advocacy and deployment organization. You may have heard of our solar co-ops, which are group buying campaigns to help lots of homeowners go solar at a reduced rate. But we also do a lot of consumer education, solar education, policy, and advocacy work, and events like this to teach you all what you need to know in order to participate in your community. And Yara, I would love for you to introduce yourself, and then Jazmin.
Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. And welcome again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Yara Marin. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I am the Interior West Regional Director with Vote Solar. If you're not familiar with Vote Solar, we're a national nonprofit. We do work in about 27 states, and we really plug in to legislative and regulatory arenas to advocate for a 100% clean energy future, with most of that powered by solar. Really excited to talk to you all today, and I'm going to pass it on to Jazmin.
Thank you so much, Yara. Hey, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jazmin Moreno. I am with Poder Latinx. I'm the environmental community organizer. We are also a nonprofit here in Phoenix and nationwide. We do a lot of work surrounding environmental justice, clean energy, solar, and again, really excited to be here and excited to get this presentation started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jazmin and Yara, for joining us tonight. So we're going to cover kind of three main topics in this presentation. I'm going to go over some of the background and history of SRP. Why is it organized the way it is, and why does the voting system kind of look like the way it looks? Yara is going to talk a little bit about why we care about these elections, their impact, and the impact that the board has on you, SRP ratepayers. And then Jazmin will finish it up with instructions on how to vote, because this is a little bit of a more complicated election than some people may be used to. We've also got some wonderful opportunities if you'd like to engage on this issue further with phone banking, knocking on doors. We want to make sure we have a high turnout for this election, and we've got some opportunities if you're interested in that. I also just want to note Solar United Neighbors, Vote Solar, and Poder Latinx, the organizations on this call, we are all 501c3 nonprofit organizations. So we are not affiliated with any specific candidates, political parties, election committees. We do not coordinate with any candidates in particular. The nature of our work and the purpose of this webinar is educational. We want to give you all tools that you need to know in order to participate. We're not about endorsing any particular candidates one way or the other. So what is SRP? Always a good question to ask, right? So SRP, you probably heard of it if you're here, is really divided up into two separate organizations. So in the late 1800s, I know we're going way back, as Central Arizona's population was growing, more and more farmers were moving to the area. A readily available supply of water was really necessary in order to continue sustained growth in the valley. So in 1903, a group of farmers and ranchers in the Phoenix Valley pledged some of their own land as collateral in order to secure a loan from the federal government. And they used that money to construct a dam at the Tonto Basin site, which is north of Roosevelt Lake, if you're familiar. This group of landowners formed the Salt River Water Users Association, also just known as the Association. And the purpose was to deliver water primarily for irrigation to these first kind of farmers and ranchers that settled into the area. There was also a small hydroelectric dam built on that first site, but again, it was mostly just kind of used to pump irrigation equipment. In 1922, the association built 3 additional dams along the Salt River. And by the 1930s, as the valley's population continued to grow, there was a new demand for residential electricity that we hadn't really seen at a scale before. So the association worked with the Arizona State Legislature to form the Salt River Project Agricultural Improvement and Power District. They were really good at naming back then. But for short, we kind of just refer to this as the district. And the purpose of this organization was to deliver power to customers. The district was and still is a political subdivision of the state, whereas the association is legally considered a private water corporation. It's a very unique sort of organization that we don't see in very many utilities in the US. Fast forward to the 50s and 60s, Phoenix's Valley was spiking after World War II, and demand for electricity consumption was skyrocketing. SRP became known more and more for what they do today, which is electricity generation. They're still providing water services, but in the 60s and 70s, they began building out kind of their first big coal and gas plants and sort of starting to take shape of what we think of when we think of SRP today. So fast forward to today, they have around 2 million total customers. They've got over 1.1 million power customers. Unfortunately, SRP is one of the dirtiest energy mixes in Arizona. And when I say energy mix, that's just the resources SRP uses to generate electricity. Right now, roughly around 70% of that is still from coal or gas. They've got a decent amount of nuclear in their fleet, and then a small portion of renewable wind and solar and other resources. They have, however, set a goal of only delivering 65% carbon-free electricity by 2035. However, we are at the same time also noticing some recent new gas expansions to their fleet, most notably Coolidge, which you may have heard of in the news recently, where SRP decided to expand capacity to that gas plant. And then for the visual folks here on the webinar, here is a map of the SRP service territory. And this is specifically for the electricity side of things. So sort of kind of on the left side, that little yellow splotch, that's downtown Phoenix, which is served by APS. And then everything in blue all around it is all SRP service territory. So most of the West Valley, most of Southern Phoenix, and then a significant part of the East Valley, as well as portions of Pinal County around Queen Creek, and a little bit of Gila County in the Northeast as well. So who makes decisions at SRP? Like I said, kind of formed out of these 2 separate organizations. They're organized very similarly though. So the district, which focuses on electricity, power generation, and delivery, they have a president and a vice president who are elected at large by the ratepayers. And then they have 10 districts with 1 board of governors each, as well as 3 council members per district. There's also 4 at-large seats that are just elected by the sum of the total votes of SRP ratepayers. The association, which is the water delivery side of SRP, again, very similar. Basically, they just don't have those 4 at-large seats. So they also have a president, a vice president who are elected at large, and then 1 board of governors and 3 council members per district. And these are the seats that you all, as SRP ratepayers, get to vote for. And with that, I will hand it over to Yara.
Thank you, Adrian. So why are these elections important, right? It's election year, but they are not in November. They're actually, around the corner here in April. And so there's a lot of reasons why you should engage and why you should care about your SRP board and council elections. First and foremost, they set rules regarding energy prices, rules around your ability to go solar and how easy it is to go solar, and any fossil fuel developments. They also determine your energy rates, including any extra fees on your electricity bill. And voting in this election really provides you an opportunity to help shape the energy landscape in Arizona. And so with this much of an impact on your life, you should absolutely be voting in this election. So what kind of decisions does the SRP district versus association make? So they set your utility rates, they set internal rules and bylaws, they can either approve or reject any new projects and proposals, They determine how easy it is for you to go solar, right? And how much you get compensated for the excess energy that you send back to your grid if you do have solar. They make all sorts of decisions that impact you directly. But there's also opportunities to engage and interact with SRP. And so the public can attend SRP district board or council meetings. SRP also holds open houses and information sessions. But I do want to note that historically, they've provided very limited opportunities for stakeholder questions. And there's also an opportunity for the board to go into closed session, the possibility for them to go into closed sessions that's not open to the public to discuss sensitive matters. And so I will go ahead and drop a link in the agenda, a link in the chat that gives you a little bit more insight into SRP's meeting schedule. And next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the specific impact that the board and council have on your everyday lives. And they're quite a bit, as you can tell. So the direct impact of the board and the council include, they determine rate structures and pricing policies, which directly impact the cost of electricity for ratepayers or for yourselves. This can include decisions on electricity rates, connection fees, and any additional charges that you might see on your bill every month. Changes in these areas directly impact the cost of electricity for ratepayers. They also influence the implementation of solar and other renewable energy projects across the state, which also directly impacts the options available to you all as ratepayers. The board and the council play a key role in approving infrastructure investments. So this includes decisions on upgrading and maintaining the electrical grid, impact decisions on community programs such as energy efficiency initiatives and incentive programs, which also has a direct impact on household expenses. The board's stance on environmental policies can influence the overall environmental impact of the energy provided. And so this includes decisions around reducing carbon emissions, managing water resources, and implementing environmentally sustainable practices. And they also decide community outreach and engagement efforts. And so the level of community engagement and the importance placed on ratepayer input in decision-making processes can vary. And so a more transparent and inclusive approach can positively impact the relationship between the utility and its customers. Thank you. Next slide. So I wanted to provide an example of SRP's rates and something that we saw back in 2015. So in 2015, SRP created a new fixed fee that charges solar customers $12 a month, which is also equivalent to $150 a year more than a non-solar customer, even if they use the exact same amount of energy. And so solar customers are compensated for energy at less than 3% or 3 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a fraction of the retail price customers pay for energy. After this change in 2015, applications to install solar dropped by 95% between 2015 and 2016. And so we definitely saw a decrease in applications, but we're now at a point in 2024 where applications are, of course, going up again, especially as solar becomes more affordable and more popular. I do want to mention, though, that solar is still less popular with SRP customers than with other utilities. And so if you're a solar customer, you're still buying energy from the utility at night, or some energy from them in general. And so SRP's export rate is very, very low in comparison. Thank you. And I will pass it on to Jazmin.
Thank you, Yara. Yes, so now I want to go over specifically of this 2024 election. You guys have a pen or pencil down, or you want to write it down on your calendar, please take note that April 2nd of 2024 of this year is the election day. We also want to highlight the fact that historically only 1%, well, really less than 1% of eligible voters for this election have participated in the past. This means that 99% of eligible voters are not utilizing their voice and are not being represented in these elections that, as Yara mentioned and has been mentioned in this presentation, impact our daily lives. These are utilities we use on a daily basis, and these decisions impact our everyday. So we really, really want to encourage those 99% and of course the 1% who has gone out and vote to use their civic participation and have their voices heard. So you may be wondering what positions are up for vote in this election term. So we divided it pretty simply, you guys, between the district and the association. For the district, there are a total of 22 electable positions. This means that there are 5 positions up for vote for the board of directors, 15 positions in the council seats, and 2 positions for at-large board of director seats. In terms of the association, there are 20 total positions open for vote. 5 positions of these are for Board of Governors and 15 positions of these are open for council. I wanted to really simplify this for you all and have a visual. So again, this is for the district positions that are eligible to vote. There are currently positions open in voting districts 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. So for voting districts 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, there is 1 open position of board of directors for these voting districts independently, as well as 3 open positions of council, again, for each voting district that I have just listed. As well as voting districts 11 and 13, there are currently 1 open position for at-large board of directors. As far as the association, the positions up for vote in these elections are for the voting districts 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So for these voting districts, each district has 1 open position for the Board of Governors, as well as, again, every district has 3 open positions for councils. Once again, in voting districts 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Now I'm throwing around the word districts. So here I have a map of the association and district votable lands. So this map gives a very good overview of how these districts are divided up and the main crossroads. Again, I highly encourage you all to go to SRP's website and see this map for yourself. However, I want to give a brief overview of what it entails and what the different colors mean. But we, again, encourage you to go to SRP's website, insert your address, and see what district your land lies on. However, for the sake of this presentation, I want to go over the colors. The yellow regions that you see on this map here are non-votable lands. Therefore, we see this in voting districts 5, 6, and 7, and a little bit of 10 at the bottom. Therefore, if you live in one of these lands, unfortunately, you do not live on land that is participating in these elections. However, if you live in the dark blue shaded area, which we see throughout the map as well, these are votable lands in district only. Therefore, these are lands that you can participate in the district open election positions that I just shared recently. And as far as the light blue, we see this scattered throughout very lightly on this map. These are votable lands in the association only. Therefore, again, if you live in one of these areas, you are able to vote in for the association positions open. And the gray area, which is largely the majority of this map, these are votable lands in both the association and the district. So if you reside in one of these areas, you are able to vote for both the association and the district positions. Again, highly encourage you to head on over to SRP's website, see this map for yourself, and really get the gist of where your land lies. And who is eligible to vote? That is one of the main questions, and we really want to get that answered for you today. So the first thing is to be eligible to vote, you must be 18 years or older. And then secondly, you also must own land in SRP service territory. Again, we highly encourage you to head on over to SRP's website, enter your address, and verify if you live on SRP service territory land. And lastly, really want to highlight the fact that you must be registered to vote in Arizona to vote in the SRP district positions. So again, be 18 years or older, own land in SRP service territory, and be registered to vote in Arizona for the district positions. It's also really important to mention that this is acreage-based voting. So this means that if you qualify and you meet all the eligibility requirements I just listed above, if you have 1 acre of land, that means that you have 1 vote. Conversely, if you have 2 acres of land, you have 200 votes. Now we know that maybe you are a joint owner of a piece of land. So in this case, you would divide up the votes. So if you have, again, 1 acre jointly owned, each person would receive half of that vote. Now, how can you participate in these special elections? First, understand the eligibility requirements. So you're doing that by being with us here. So again, thank you very much. But if you would like more information or more clarification about eligibility, we highly encourage you to head on over to the SRP election information line, which is 602-236-3040, or of course, send them an email at election@srpnet.com. Also, make sure that you are registered to vote in Arizona. And again, we want to highlight some really important dates for these elections. So request your mail-in ballot by March 22nd, vote or mail in person by election day, April 2nd. And of course, tell your neighbors to vote, pass the word along. There's so much power in voice. And if we can all collectively tell one person, one friend, one neighbor, we truly make a very big difference. And now, if you would like to take it a step further, please go on ahead and sign Sun's petition to make it a little bit easier to vote. We understand that this may be complex. However, we are here to break it down for you. And by signing this petition, we take this a step further. Of course, we also welcome you to join our phone and text bank to remind people to get out and vote as this election approaches us. And also, we really encourage you to volunteer with us here at Poder Latinx. We do canvassing and knock on doors and promote participation. And we encourage you all to head on over to our website and volunteer with us. I also want to highlight some of these resources. We have, again, as I've mentioned, the SRP election information line, that's 602-236-3040. If you have any questions regarding these elections, they have been great at responding all of our questions. So really highly encourage you all. And also, again, election@srpnet.com. Now, as far as dates, if you would like to get out a pen and pencil and write these down, by March 4th, be eligible and be registered to vote for these elections. By March 22nd, it's the last day to request a mail-in ballot. And then in March 22nd, it's the last day to safely mail in your ballot back. And again, April 2nd is election day.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jazmin. That was awesome. I feel like there was one thing that I totally forgot to mention in my section. This is a little kind of wonky detail about all this. So because of the historic boundaries of SRP's previous service territory, there are a few splotches of APS service territory where folks may be eligible to vote in the SRP election. I know that sounds really weird, but I encourage you to check out your eligibility to vote, because there are some parts of the Phoenix area, especially in Southern Phoenix, that are just over the line and are able to participate in either the association or the district elections, but you may be an APS customer. There's not a lot of people like that, but there are a few, and so we just wanted to make that really clear. At this point, that concludes our main presentation. Would love to open it up to any questions that you all have. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat now. I don't think I saw any too pressing questions. But yeah, looks like we got a question from Eric. All right, Eric, you should be able to talk.
Okay. Can anybody hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Hi. Hey, I want to compliment all three of you on a really great presentation. I spent 9 years working at SRP plus a year as an intern, and I doubt if I ever had as tight and organized PowerPoint slides as what I just saw. They're really good. Did a great job. I want to add one thing to this. The SRP's, I think, influence as a corporate citizen is something, and as a policymaking organization down in the legislature is extremely important. And it's not in the slides, and it probably wouldn't normally be, but they do, along with APS and Southwest Gas and a handful of other Chamber of Commerce members, they exert significant influence on a lot of legislation down at the Capitol, which is just another reason why the election for who governs them is important, because the policy decisions they make are kind of made in with a lot of other like-minded corporate citizens, and they go beyond water and power. They go into areas of taxation, and you know, they weigh in on legislation through other groups like the Arizona Chamber and like national organizations like ALEC that they belong to. So they leverage their influence just like other organizations do, and other and nonprofits and others. So I just wanted to like toss that in along with the compliment. That's it.
Appreciate that, Eric. Thanks so much. I did see a question from Melanie that I want to read out loud. It says, can we use a map or online tool to check out whether people in our networks can vote? For example, an APS neighborhood where members of our churches live, or certain SRP neighborhoods. I believe my colleague Emma hopefully is able to drop that link in the chat, since I do not have access to it right now. But yes, there is a website on SRP's page where you can type in any address. It'll tell you if it's in the service territory and whether you can vote for the district, the association, or both, which has been an incredibly helpful resource. So we'll be able to share that with you. And then a question here from Tony: is anybody doing any advocacy work on changing the SRP voting structure that people can get involved with? The one point I did want to make, we mentioned it very briefly in the webinar, but Sun has a petition on our website asking for this very thing. So as Yasmin just explained, the voting process and the eligibility requirements are complicated, right? And not only do you have to figure out if you qualify, but you have to proactively request a mail-in ballot or vote in person on the single election day. So we have a petition up on our website that's simply asking for SRP to make it easier and less burdensome for folks to vote. If they were able to, I think, expand some of these eligibility requirements, it would increase participation pretty significantly. Yara, Yasmin, anything you'd like to say about that?
No, I think you brought up the great points, but yes, really encourage you all to go sign that petition. This is, I think, what we hear all collectively across all of our communities. And I think that there's power in numbers. So if we can really get those numbers and the petitions up and make it heard that we all demand this, I think we would make some great change. So yes, that petition is great. So thank you for setting that up.
And I just want to say that I live in SRP territory, and trying to figure out if I'm eligible, who I'm eligible to vote with, and all of the ins and outs of this process have been complicated even for myself. And so yes, if you all have any additional questions that come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, send us an email, and we're happy to offer as much support and as much information as possible. We want to make sure that, we know that elections are already complicated, but we want to make sure that you all feel really good about registering, and that we're able to provide you with all of the resources needed so that you can plug into your right to vote here.
Absolutely. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. I'm going to go ahead and just stop my screen share so I can see things a little bit better. We had another good question. How did the at-large position works? At-large normally means they represent everyone, but in this case, they have district numbers associated with those positions. So for the district side of things, there are those 10 districts where there's a board of, there's a governor, and then the 3 council members for each of those districts. There are additionally 4 at-large members that are elected by the entire SRP voting pool. So yes, it is the traditional definition of at-large. They represent everybody. It's just going to be whoever wins the most votes for those seats. Tony, we may have misunderstood your question earlier. Sorry about that. They were asking a little bit more about the vote allocation. I think it's a bit ridiculous that the original landowners have much greater voting power over 100 years after they put their land up for collateral. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to give a little bit of the history of like the background of what SRP looked like in the early 1900s, because in 1903, it did make a little bit more sense for an acreage-based voting system. SRP was only providing water, and they were only providing water to large farms and ranches primarily when they first started out. Since these owned properties put up their own property as collateral, it made a little bit more sense back then for a 500-acre farm to have a little bit more say than maybe a single-acre farm. But flash forward to today, where SRP is most known as an electricity utility. They also still provide water, but they're in the Phoenix metro area, right? There's a lot of ratepayers that don't own very much land. So all I can really say to that is it would be up to SRP, from my understanding, to change how that system works. And I am not aware of any current advocates working on that issue in particular. But yes, it does seem a little outdated. Great. Yara, Yasmin, and I are going to hang out for a little bit longer if anybody else has any final questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming. I really hope that you learned something new tonight. If you need to drop off, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Philip, yes. So there's a single ballot for association and district. Everything should be on the same page. You're not getting a separate ballot for each. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, like I said, we'll hang out if there's some more questions, but otherwise, thanks so much.
Thank you all for your time. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Tony, that's another really good question. Where can we get information on specific candidates' views? If you've done any Googling about looking up the candidates, you may have learned that not very many of them have campaign websites, and it can be a little difficult to find out where each person stands on the issues. Sun, right now, we are in the process of sending out a 501c3 candidate survey to all of the candidates participating in the 2024 election. Again, we're not endorsing candidates, we're not making specific recommendations, but this is an effort to give you all a tool to understand where candidates might stand on particular issues. We'll be posting that on our website when it's ready, and I'm sure we'll probably email that out when it's ready, just so folks know where it is. The list of candidates is also on SRP's website, and there's a little bit of public information you can find about them as well. So if you feel so inclined to reach out to the candidates running in your district, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Ask them directly.
Thank you all.
Awesome.